Hello, everyone. Thanks for watching the Journey Enhancement YouTube channel. Once again, my name is Ethan Merriweather, and I'm here with Rich and a host of friends this time. One of the things that we were talking about before we started here today was talking about not compromising.
Compromise.
And one thing that I started thinking about as the conversation was going on was when we enter into this world not knowing anything, into environments, a social construct, and how do we develop ourselves and recognizing who we are or who God would want us to be within that environment? How do we get to that level?
Well, that's interesting, Ethan, because when you were talking about it, the first thing that came to my mind is how I was raised, my parents. Okay, when I go back and think about what influenced me the most in terms of my behavior, it's a statement my mother made to me, and I've shared this with you before. She said to me, "God is always watching you." And that had a lasting impact on me. So, plus, they went to church regularly. We had to kneel down and say prayers before we went to bed. And, so what happened is my parents imparted into my life the attributes of good behavior. And those were the guidelines that I followed and embraced. Now, I wanted to do that. My older brother was different. He resisted, and he was more of a mischievous type of an individual. Okay, where I wanted to do the things that pleased people and to be a nice guy, my older brother enjoyed being mischievous and doing things that were could get you in trouble. So, but what I'm realizing today, especially when we meet on Wednesday evenings with our men's group, that we all come from different environments, and the environment that we were in at the very beginning of our lives starts to formulate the way it's going to be for our future. And in many situations that I'm listening to, people are not satisfied with exactly where they are right now, and they want to change it. And what happens is they start reflecting on things of the past that have impacted them, and they allow it to get them emotionally involved.
Babe, you're living in the past.
They have, they don't do this intentionally, but it's almost natural. When I look back at some of the things in the past that I didn't like, I could become angry, I could become sad, and I could allow those things to influence the behavior that I'm going forward with. Now, the other side to that is, what am I looking forward to? What do I want to do? Where do I want to go? And when I was talking to my friend John yesterday, we were talking about how some people gravitate to the things of the past that make them angry, and other people gravitate to where they're going and get excited about it and have a more optimistic attitude. And that is all based on the choice we want to make. And to have that, in the Bible it says, as a man speaketh from the heart, so he is. Well, when you think about what that proverb is saying, it's saying that what's in our heart. And when we think about that, we actually have the opportunity to determine what we want to be in our heart. It's all part of self-awareness. So if we have that kind of, if we use those kinds of guidelines in our character, it will help us to formulate the person that we want it to be. And from a spiritual perspective, to me, you look at the 10 Commandments, the fruits of the Spirit, and the Beatitudes. Those all are moral and character behaviors that if we master them, guess what? You can't help but to please other people and please the Lord as well.
A couple of things. When we're talking about journey enhancement, one of the things that is foundational, if you will, is growth, okay? Because when you talk about journey enhancement, in my mind, you're talking about going from one place to another,
Correct.
Okay? So that being said, Rich, when you said what your mother said concerning God is watching you,
Yes.
when you said that, I thought about that as the understanding then. What was the understanding then versus what was the message? Now, I'm speaking in general right now. I'm not asking you to answer for your mother, but the point I'm getting at is this. When some people hear God is watching you, they see that as a negative.
Right.
Meaning you better toe the line and do well, okay? But as your journey with God grows,
Yes.
you should actually see that as a benefit.
There's two parts to it.
Okay.
When I was a little boy, it instilled fear. Now, what does the Bible say? Fear is the beginning of knowledge and wisdom. Okay, now I didn't know that back then, but just as you just as you see it, as I've gotten older, I realize that that presence of the Lord in my life is extremely positive, because I realize that by pleasing Him, I'm growing in who I am becoming, and it doesn't ever end. You know, one of the things about Journey Enhancement that I think is important, and I'm glad you brought that up, is why Journey Enhancement. In other words, what caused me to identify what we're doing right now as Journey Enhancement. And what I understood is that no matter where we are in our life, we're at a point where we're constantly have the opportunity to make choices as to where we want to go from here. And whether you're 8 or 80, you're still on the move. So when I looked at Journey Enhancement, I looked at it exactly that way, is that where are we all in the journey of life, and what do we want to put into it or take out of it to create more of who God wants us to be. And in Journey Enhancement, one of my goals is to be able to help other people to do exactly that.
And along with that, I had a second thought, which goes right along with it, which is this. As you had mentioned, we all remember the past. Past events have happened. And the thought that came to my mind is, does the past affect you now as it did when it happened, however long ago? Okay?
Absolutely not.
Right,
No.
because for some, it becomes chains on them that prevents them from going forward. But when we see that our behavior then being darkened or not having knowledge, once we recognize that, I think what you're bringing forth through this program here is showing us how we can let loose of those chains that were keeping us from growing because we don't see it yet, and so our past stays our future, and then we never grow.
On Facebook, there was a comment, I think it was Denzel Washington. Somebody, I guess it was talking about discrimination. Denzel's response to that is, if you wanted to change, stop talking about it. And when people were talking about the past and how they're angry about it, and, you know, here I am now and it's all because of what happened in the past. Well, do you want to keep that conversation going and allow it to be the same in the future? Or do you want to change the context of the conversation?
Right.
You know, so, you know, to me, there's a lot to holding on to the past and letting go of the past. A good example for me, I spent a year in Vietnam. I can only remember maybe 5 or 6 situations while I was in Vietnam. Now, I could remember sharing with someone recently that when I went over there, I had one lasting thought every day in my mind. I'm going to make it, and I'm going to be going home. I always thought that the outcome was going to be favorable, no matter what. And no one could change that for me. And that's the way that I have basically traveled through different challenges in my life. In the corporate world, when things weren't going well for me, I didn't dwell in the pity of, woe is me, I wish somebody would appreciate me. No, I looked forward to things that I could do to create opportunity to move myself forward. And one of the things I've noticed, again, when I look at the crowd that we have on a Wednesday night, sometimes we have 8 people and sometimes we have 18. And there are people in the group that are really having difficulty letting go of the past. And, I don't know how, I wish I knew how, to influence them in such a way that they would really let go of it. But sometimes, because it's all we know, we don't want to let go of it. It's justifying who we are now.
When James talked about growth, right?
Yes.
I think it's very important for us to understand what that growth is, right? Because you can either grow in a worse state,
Yes,
or grow in a ideal state that I believe that God would want us to be. One of the thoughts that I had was to go back to not compromising, right?
okay.
And when you talk about not compromising, I think it's important to discuss that people sometimes don't compromise when actually they should compromise.
Compromise is a very interesting word.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
When I say I'll never compromise, I should say I'm never going to compromise in such a way that's going to take away from the person I am. Because there are times when we need to compromise in order to accommodate who we are, to allow us into an environment where we could be very influential. So in those cases, compromise is effective.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to recognize when it's a benefit and when it's a detriment.
That's it.
So as you were talking about it, I was thinking about what are the reasons that we compromise and we allow ourselves to be less than who we are and be influenced by a negative source that's taking away from us. Mm-hmm. And when I look back at my own life, the biggest reason for compromising for me was I didn't have a strong academic background. Mm-hmm. I barely made it out of high school. I had 1 year of a community college that I went to, and I did okay there. Okay, but when I found myself compromising, it was because I had a family and I needed to support them. And I was concerned that if I didn't go along with the political environment in the workplace, that I might lose my job, and consequently, I wouldn't be able to provide for my family. So I would go along with whatever the leadership required to be what they wanted, even though I might have recognized that, wait a second, that's really not right.
Right.
Examples of that. I was for a period of time in my life, I was involved in the transportation industry, and it was a union management environment. We had a contract with the Teamsters, and, we had a contract that was literally in writing. And what would happen periodically is the management would violate the contract for the purpose of making more money. And I didn't like that. Mm-hmm. But if I didn't go along with it, I'd lose my position. So it was a real struggle for me.
Oh, yeah.
And what I did to help me to get through the process is whenever I saw the compromise on the table and I would talk to the rank and file, I would make it very clear to them that it was beyond my control to change those circumstances, and if I attempted to do so, my career would be at stake. And because I was transparent with them, I got a lot of respect and support from that side of the business.
So I have a question. I hope I can this makes sense. So in the spiritual realm world that we live in, we are instructed to serve, to die to ourselves. Things that, when I look at die to yourself, is meaning like putting yourself aside and being a servant, right? How does being a servant, dying to yourself, and then maybe over-compromising too much where you feel like I'm being taken for granted?
And it's interesting because we just did the DISC model of human behavior. And there is one behavior, what we call the people that are the high chargers, the highly motivated people that only 10% of our population is that. We're talking about the D people. They're drivers, okay? They are strong influencers, and basically they don't struggle with that. The people that struggle with that are the people that are natural servers. My wife is a natural server. And what she will do is she will do everything she can to please someone else at her own risk, knowing that it's going to take, she's going to sacrifice. Now, I think that the real strength of serving is exactly putting others before yourself. One of the things that I can say that's true is that when I was drafted into the Army and I took the oath, at that time I understood that I was willing to lay down my life for the country, and I would still do it. Okay? And I think that that intention speaks well of a character of serving. Unfortunately, we are constantly dealing with the flesh, with who we are. And we all have a tendency to want what's best for us first. And to get to the point where we're really looking at what's best for other people first takes a tremendous amount of awareness and discipline to do that. And everyone knows where they are in terms of putting other people first or putting ourselves first. So the question is, where is it on your mind every day? When I go to the grocery store, one of the things I'm constantly doing is looking to see what can I do in this environment to help somebody. And, I don't always have an opportunity. But last week, it was really kind of interesting. A lady with 2 kids walked by a display rack, and they bumped the rack and something fell on the floor. And the kid was about to walk away, and the mother said, "Pick that up." I had already bent down and I said, "I'll get it." Now, as insignificant as that sounds, I actually was looking to see how could I provide service in this situation. I'm always looking to do that. Now, there are times when I'll pass by something and I say, "Oh, darn it, I should have acted and I didn't." Mm-hmm. I don't know if that answers your question, but...
So in that vein, when we're being a servant, and then I think you talked about negatively compromising. Yes. And so when you're being a servant and you're trying to serve and put yourself aside, is how do you determine if you're negatively compromising and trying to be a servant at the same time?
Well, you mean if you're putting yourself aside for selfish reasons? Is that what you're getting at?
I don't know. It's just like, it's like if I'm always the one that's compromising or being a servant, that's my mindset, I'm being a servant, and you feel like you're always compromising because you're trying to be a servant. And then you begin to start to feel like I'm always the one doing this, I'm always, and then you go through those thoughts.
I look at that from a leadership perspective. And one of the things that you've heard this so many times that leaders have said is very lonely at the top. Well, when you have a mindset that you're talking about where you're so willing to serve that at sometimes you think, what, is it ever going to end? Is it constantly going to be me? That's not a negative compromise. That's a very positive one, because what you're doing is you're demonstrating to an extreme how important serving is. And there aren't enough people in our population that really take it to that degree, because if there were, it would truly change the world. So I applaud you for it. I think it's great. And I understand the feeling of, gee whiz, how come it's, sometimes I personally feel extremely lonely. I have a mindset, I have values, and I have ways of life that are pretty challenging to other people. So what I have found in my small world of those people I'm extremely close to, those are the people that share the values the same way. When I get outside of that arena, people don't typically gravitate to me. So one of the things that happens in Journey Enhancement is I want to create a difference for that. I want to help those people that don't know how to gravitate to it to understand the value of gravitating to it and the behavior that's necessary to accomplish it.
Rich, I love what you just said, because it goes along scripturally as well, obviously, because when you use the word enhancement, it's a form of it results in bringing attention even to yourself.
Yes,
Okay?
definitely.
So in doing so, when you see that others are in need of seeing what they should do,
Yep.
and if you're the one that's doing what they should do,
Yes.
you become a light.
Yes.
And you understand that you're doing it because you are blessed to know something that they may not necessarily know at that particular time.
Yeah.
And then we also have to keep in mind that God is watching.
That's right, just like my mother said.
Right. Now, what I mean by that is not watching from the standpoint
Yeah.
of punishing,
No.
Right.
but it's his desire that all of us come to that same knowledge.
Yep.
So if you have the heart and the knowledge of a servant and you are operating in that, I would think that that's where having the understanding of the benefits of it would help us to continue to do what we know is right, even as others may not get it at that moment and seem to be taking advantage of us.
I'm glad you brought that up. This is very good discussion, and definitely the question that Dave asked. And I thought I looked at it, and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought I looked at it in a different way, right? So I'm gonna shoot this out.
It's really
right?
okay if you did.
So, because he's saying that from my understanding, if he's saying that your drive, and I'm just putting words in your mouth, right? So if you don't mind, so if your drive is to be a servant, right, and you're a service spiritually, in reality, in the reality outside of yourself or whatnot, and you don't feel like you're receiving the appreciation or whatnot, would the compromise cause the good that you're doing to turn you into something is totally opposite of God? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do understand what you're saying, and I think that's a really good observation. And here's what it amounts to. When we talk about turning the other cheek, think about if I slap you in the face. Think about what we're saying that you need. That's really like, are you kidding me? You hit me in the face, I'm going to hit you back. That's the flesh. Okay. What happens is when we start to think that we're being taken advantage of because of doing things that we know are pleasing to the Lord, we better take a look at our ego. Really. Because now we're saying, am I more important than what the Lord wants?
Yes.
As far as me pleasing him? That's the checkpoint.
That's good.
And you know what? Quite frankly, it should never happen.
Yeah. But how often? So
I get the feeling that way sometimes, that people are taking advantage of me big time.
we know prior to that coming, where you can arm yourself, right? So that you'll never go down that path.
It's all experience. It's really interesting when you talk about things like that. You don't know that it hurt you until you experience the emotion that you felt after an action took place.
Yeah.
That's the key. Now, when that emotion comes up, you know what it's telling you? Pay attention.
Beautiful.
You're missing the point. You're gravitating toward the ego. Since when are you more important than serving?
Wow.